Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. If you're a new listener, thanks for joining us. And if you're a loyal listener, thanks so much for joining me again. There is no limit to the variety of examples of lives of purpose. When we align our life and work with what we believe, it can take any shape and often does. In my last episode, you met entrepreneur extraordinaire Leonie Dawson. In this episode, meet a very personal service-based business all about breastfeeding. Men, please don't stop listening. There's lots of interest for you here too. The owner of this business, J Isenstadt, is a lactation expert and an IBCLC, International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. She lives in Arizona currently and works globally via Skype on client consultations and through her unique breastfeeding course. She is passionate about helping moms and families recognize the importance of what they are accomplishing through the fourth trimester. While her work focuses on moms and the girls, her mission is making a difference by empowering those moms to live their mission fully in this world. Her online course is available at www.aabreastfeeding.com/online-breastfeeding-class. All links that we talk about, including that one, are in the show notes. And for now, let's meet Lori. Hi, everyone. Help me welcome J Isenstadt to the show today. Lori, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here with you today, Jan.
I'm so happy to have you. As everyone heard in the intro, you are a lactation specialist, and I'm so thrilled to have you be part of the Values-Based Business Series. Can you explain to our audience who may not understand what an IBCLC and a lactation specialist are, just exactly what it is?
Absolutely. I get asked this question all the time. So I always say the alphabet soup letters after my name. The IBCLC stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant.
Wow.
A lot of people just say lactation consultant. However, in my business, you can call yourself a breastfeeding educator, a breastfeeding consultant, a lactation consultant, a lactation educator, and all of those people can literally just have taken a 3 or 5 day, 40-hour week class and call themselves the lactation consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a skip between lactation consultant, breastfeeding educator, and the IBCLC, which is over 1,000 hours of education and clinical hours that culminate in taking a test that happens once a year. And so you either pass it or you fail it. And if you don't, then you don't get to take it for another whole year. So there's a lot that goes into that IBCLC.
Well, from listening to your podcast, I love your podcast. Obviously, I am not a nursing mom, and yet I enjoy your podcast. It combines such a great combination of humor, compassion, information, wisdom, expertise, knowledge, and there's a gem in there for everybody, just human nature. So as part of that, though, I really get the sense of you more as a medical professional. Is that part of the IBCLC?
Not necessarily. There are registered nurses. There are a few physicians, a very, very small percent, who are IBCLCs. In order to be an IBCLC, you can hold that credential separately. You don't need to have any other credentials.
Okay. So I'm curious how you got started. When did you first know you wanted to do this as your life's calling?
It is one of those questions that I get asked all the time, and at different points in my career, I was able to stop and start at a certain point of accomplishments. It is not that I ever thought that I would become an IBCLC. My journey into, I call being a birthing junkie, it started when I was pregnant with my first baby, Alicia Heather. And I had a birth that I wasn't so crazy about. It was okay, but I realized shortly afterwards that was not the kind of birth that I would want for my next labor and birth. So it's always funny because I'm dating myself, but that was in the days when we still had video stores where you would go to a video store and rent a couple of videos. And that was in the very early days where our video store maybe just had a couple of hundred videos. After I had Alicia, it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, and now I'm going to the library, and now I'm starting to read more about birth and breastfeeding. So much more than I did when I was pregnant, because now I realized that there was so much missing from my experience, and I wanted to learn more about it. That became my next goal, to become a childbirth educator, because I was upset at all the things that I didn't know and that no one taught me. So I wanted to know for my own self for my next birth, and that evolved into myself becoming a childbirth educator, because I realized that there were so many women who were uninformed, and I wanted to become a childbirth educator. So I did that, and that evolved into becoming a birth doula, because as I started teaching childbirth classes, my students, the parents that I work with, they started to see me as an expert, and I started to go to births. Then I took a training to become a birth doula and started to attend births, which meant that I was going as a support person for the mother and her partner, but not in a medical way, but in a physical and emotional support and a birth advocate for her. So as I evolved into becoming a birth doula, I then became a postpartum doula, because I realized that there was a huge need for women after they had their baby, because it's like we have our babies and then people just kind of say bye-bye, and then we're on our own, and there's a huge gap, and women need help and support physically and emotionally, in that we call it the fourth trimester, the first 3 months after a baby. So I helped women in their birth, and then I helped them postpartum. That evolved into me hanging out with a bunch of midwives, because I had a couple of planned home births, became friends with midwives in my community on Long Island, New York, started a bunch of grassroots midwifery home birth groups. And then I said I want to become a midwife. That proved difficult, however, because my husband worked in a family business, and I was not able to do the work and to be able to attend births at a moment's notice as I would if I were to become an apprentice. At a certain point, we moved from New York to Phoenix, Arizona, at which point I said, my kids are a little bit older. Now I can become a midwife. I think I can leave them more, my husband's home more, but I was not able to find an apprenticeship. I got a job at a local hospital as a childbirth educator, and there I met an IBCLC. And it sounds so funny now. And I always tell her I must have been so insulting to you, because she was an IBCLC, and I was like, what's that? Because at that time the profession was still fairly new. And I had helped some women on a very general level breastfeeding, but if it didn't go too well, if it was really difficult, then I was out of the picture, because I didn't know how to help them. So she became my mentor as an IBCLC, because she said, you know what, I just wound up taking training to be able to mentor someone. Are you interested? And at first I was like, no, because I really want to become a midwife. And I tried for about 3 months to find a midwifery apprenticeship, and it just was not available. So the midwives that I had gotten to know had students, and they have students only 1 or 2 at a time for 2 or 3 years at a time. So I was like on a wait list. And I remember saying to my husband, what should I do? What should I do? I don't want to wait 3 years, but this IBCLC mentorship, and I really like helping women with breastfeeding. I don't know that it's going to come around again. And he said, well, how soon do you think, if you can't decide, when will another apprenticeship to become an IBCLC available to you? And I started searching around, and it was like, never. It was like we kind of fell in each other's laps. So that's how I became an IBCLC. She was my mentor for about 2 years. and I worked alongside her in 2 large city hospitals in Phoenix, Arizona. I was able to accomplish all the goals that I needed to do in order to take that big exam, which I did. And then, so since 2001, I've been a lactation consultant. I've worked in the hospitals and in private practice. So that is the very, I just put like 20 years of stuff into hopefully a short, nice little container, in which, if you have an interest in pulling out any more details, I'll be happy to share.
Yeah, it's fascinating because what I have really heard in all of that is a through line of advocacy for the moms, the pregnant moms, and afterward, that fourth trimester. And in your programs on your podcast, I pick up a lot on that fourth trimester, the postpartum, the stress, the depression, the aftercare that's needed of the whole family. Not just the baby, but the family.
Yes.
So that advocacy that you commit to, the teaching, the educating, I call it teaching, but the educator in you was consistent in all of that. And also in your other work as a educator for your own course. You have your own course that you've developed as part of all this work. So this is what I love, is hearing your story and hearing how what you do has established who you are, or how who you are has established what you do and all of that in the world. So it's fascinating to me. So what do you think, in terms of this theme of values-based business, what would you pull out as your top values that you really strive for with your business?
With my business, I really hope to help mothers in their mothering, basically. I just feel like being pregnant and becoming a mother is so at the core of what women can do and be in the world. And the value that I add to it is for them to realize that it's more than just being pregnant and more than just giving birth, that we truly are raising little human beings of the next generation. And for parents to see the value in what they're doing, because so often mothering is just kind of pushed aside. It's kind of like an add-on almost, and it's really not well thought out by, I think, society as a whole. In the United States, anyway. I mean, I met women who came from Germany and Switzerland and Finland over 30 years ago. And those countries place mothering and families at the top of their list. They value mothers, they value fathers and partners, and they value parents. And they see that as, I don't want to put a number on it per se, but they see that as their most important commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way that I see that, because if we don't build healthy and strong mothers, they are not able to be healthy and strong for their children. And then we see those cracks in the family. And then it just, everything goes outward. It like starts very close inward during the baby growing inside, and then we give birth, and then we start going out into the world. And so I think that even if a woman does know that the work she's doing is important, many people around her don't necessarily see it that way. So in my work, I really enjoy helping women see that without lecturing, but more or less by role modeling and by pulling out the things that they're telling me that they enjoy, that they think are important, and accentuating it for them and showing them, yes, this is very important. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It absolutely does. And a couple thoughts that I really wanted to jump on with that is when you talked about the mom, starting with that birth and the gift that she's contributing to the world. It reminds me of, I think of how everything in life starts with, ourself, right? And then it's the family. I think in threes, right? Ourself, our family, the community, whatever that is, and then the world. It just goes out. So with your moms, it starts with that very pod beginning and then grows from there. And I'm going to pull up a testimonial that you got that, to me, is the foundation of stating that. And while I do, what I'd really like to hear from you is what you've found as your podcast has developed and as your work has developed, with some of the interviews that I've been hearing you do from some of these women that are doing more of the type of work in the world, that is really, to me, illustrative of what you're talking about. Because you've been doing some incredible interviews with women in prison, and I'd really like to hear you explain it rather than me try to stumble through an explanation.
Yes, it's so interesting also as we go out into our world with our vision of the work that we want to do, and we get into it and we enjoy it and it spreads, and then we grow and evolve. And one of the things that's happened with the podcast is that it has evolved. It started out with me saying that my mission was to normalize breastfeeding globally. And so, what I really want to see happen, my greatest wish would be for women to be able to go out into the world and not have any one person ever say to them anything negative about them breastfeeding their baby in public, because I see it as they're just feeding their baby. And I want that to be so normal to see it all around the world that people aren't highlighting it as anything different. And I want people to not be saying to mothers, are you still breastfeeding? So my huge desire with my work is absolutely to help one woman at a time with breastfeeding. That's what I've done a lot of my career, and it has evolved. And with the podcast, I want to reach people globally to normalize breastfeeding. And that has happened, it's always gradual, not just me, but other people are working on that. And I see it evolving because, like, I just put out a poll to my breastfeeding group, and I said, what are some of the questions that you're asked the most? And one of the questions that I was usually asked when I was nursing my babies, it was very common for people to say, you're not going to do that here, are you? And that was probably the biggest question. And now I gave a list of about 10 different options, and that one was the least asked question of mothers out in public. So I'm just thrilled about that. The other thing is, what I really wanted to do was to be able to expose people to breastfeeding. In other words, not just to preach to the choir. Mm-hmm. So I had expanded, because we all know that we love breastfeeding, and if we all just keep it in house, how do we spread that to the rest of the world? And so it has just evolved in doing so that I'm starting to spread my wings a little bit and interview people who are book authors on lactation or parenting, mothers in depression, and various other aspects of mothering. And so then what happens is that these guests then share the show with their circle of people. And again, they're not all people who are deeply ensconced in the world of mothering and breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. But they now have someone who's been on the show that has an interest in what we were talking about. You mentioned Martha Painter. She was the mom who is working with women in pregnancy in prison. And I had a fabulous show with her. Yeah. That, again, to me, it wasn't just about breastfeeding. She was talking about I always say the word injustice, but it's so much more than that, with women who are pregnant or giving birth and who are breastfeeding and they are in prison. And she just explained the whole gamut of what happens to women in prison. And we just tend to think, oh, bad person, they're in prison, sorry. And one of the things that she was saying, at least in Canada, we have something similar in America, where you're going to like a holding cell. almost a jail where you're being held until you actually go to trial. And
Mm-hmm.
so the assumption with the outside world is with a mother in prison is that she's guilty, but she may not even be guilty, but she's put there and she could be pregnant, ready to give birth next month, next week, or in the next hour, and she's stuck in prison. And if she gives birth, then she's separated from her baby. And of course, that's just a poor way for both of them to start off life. So, interviewing people like Martha and interviewing people who do things that's related to breastfeeding, but not exactly and only breastfeeding, has been fabulous. It allowed me to spread my wings and spread the word more about mothers and breastfeeding.
Yeah. And the review that I wanted to read is you get lots of incredible, well-deserved reviews, but this one, I just will enjoy reading it. Oops, I did something, so it just blew up huge on my screen. And now I'm trying to get it to where this is live as I'm trying. So, Lori.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Lori is wonderful. I've started listening from the beginning, and I love the content and boldness of the topic she shares. After 2 years of breastfeeding, I'm learning even more about breastfeeding and also about my passion to help other women. Thank you for everything you do and for empowering so many women. And that's the point that I wanted to read this review for, because what I find you do that is so instrumental behind and beyond just, and I don't mean to demean it as just a lactation specialist, but in addition to being an IBCLC, is that empowerment and the passion of helping other women as part of it, changing the world in addition, as part of your work with that. It goes through your work and as part of your mission. And that's so powerful.
Yes, it is. And, I often say to moms and, families who compliment me, I thank them for their generous and kind words of appreciation for the work that I do. Because just like you, we do great work in the world. And we would probably do it even if we didn't have to do it. But it still is nice to get that pat on the back and someone saying good job. And that's what reviews are about. And they're also very, very telling. So that was a really good and classic example of the value of the work that I do, because there's a small percentage, but a very, very active and passionate percentage of women that I have the opportunity to work with, or women listening to me on the podcast, who go out and decide to become an IBCLC because of the help that they needed and what I brought to the table for them. They saw how helpful it was for them, and then they in turn want to go into this profession because it was so profound to them. And now each one teach one. They want to go out and help the next families. And so it's not just the kind words of appreciation in print, but it's all the meaning behind it. Like this person, that's really what she was saying that she learned so much, even though she's been breastfeeding for 2 years. So that's the power of the podcast for her to not only learn from me, but I'm sure she's learned a ton from the guests that I've had. So I thank you and appreciate you for reading that out loud and giving me an opportunity to expand on it a bit.
Yeah, that one, I mean, all of the reviews are well-deserved and wonderful, but that one just encapsulated it so well. Yeah, so great. Now your course too, I think is so wonderful, because what you've done is you've created a course that again helps mothers do what I don't believe has been presented in that way before. Don't you provide support that wasn't existing in any way like that before?
Yes, again how I evolve and my business evolved. So when I first started, I was working as a lactation consultant in the hospital and in clinics around Arizona, and and I felt really good about it. And I thought that's the way to help moms, and it is. But I also saw a huge gap in the system. In other words, we can help moms for the first 24, maybe 48 hours to do something that they're going to be doing for a year or longer. And we're only giving them 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of our time to learn something that's so important. And so what happens is when moms leave their providers, whether it's a midwife at a birthing center, or the home birth midwife goes home and on to the rest of her practice, or the mom is discharged from a hospital, and then she's home alone in her own space, trying to learn the art of breastfeeding, which was really helpful to us several generations ago with our mothers and grandmothers and sisters and aunts, basically kind of up in our business, micromanaging us, but that was helpful and we needed it, but we're missing several generations of that. So we have a huge initiation rate for breastfeeding. It's up to 85%, but 3 months later, it's less than 40%. And that huge drop off happens between mothers being discharged from care and literally the first 2 to 4 weeks, that they just don't, they're not connected with experts who can help guide them and answer the many questions and kind of coach them, and if things aren't going well and what to do about it. So I opened up my private practice, and for many years I felt really, really good about that, and I know that myself and my peers are closing that gap. Now we've done really, really well with that, but now we're realizing that the initiation rates are way high, but we're still having a problem with the duration rates. And I just know, like deep in the core of me, that women need ongoing support for breastfeeding. It's still not good enough just to get off to a good start and 2 weeks later say you have a good supply, your baby's gaining. There are so many things that happen in our mothering life and in this way in breastfeeding, that one of the things that I've done with the course is I've said to myself, okay, so I can not only expand on the breastfeeding class that I've done locally, which is only can be 90 minutes to 2 hours. It's now over 40 hours of learning, taking moms from preparing during their pregnancy and preparing themselves emotionally, physically, and for the actual art of breastfeeding, helping to prepare their partner. Because one of the things we've learned is like people just think it's like a mother thing. So if there are any guys out there or any partners, when a mom is breastfeeding, you basically need to know everything that she knows. Just because you're not actually breastfeeding the baby, you're the one staying with her, helping her, advocating for her. And so you need to learn a lot more too. And there's just no time to do that in local hospital birthing center classes. So I said to myself, I need to do a lot better with the education, need to have a way of expanding the information for moms, need to have a way for them to be able to access this information any old time of day and night, because people lead very busy lives and often partners aren't coming to class because they can't find a time to take classes that are given like once a month and for partners to take them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a way that they can take it at their own pace, and they can like talk about it because it's a course, it's online. So they can review it, they can rewind it, listen to it again, look at all the handouts as many times as they want because they have lifetime access. So I feel like I've made a significant difference in the education that I'm able to provide, and give an opportunity for partners and other family members to also participate in the class. Then the thing I'm really excited about is for the moms to be in a private group with me where about 5 days a week, they can have access to me and just post all the questions. I think I read about 6 months ago that the average pediatrician expects the average new parents to have about 50 questions the first week alone of
Wow.
having a newborn.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much that we don't know, and with breastfeeding it just goes on and on. So there's a group, but also I have a virtual meetup. So once a week, right now we're doing it on Saturdays, and we sometimes change it up a bit so that the moms can come on live with me and meet the other moms who are taking the class and get to see their babies or their pregnant bellies if they're taking the class when they're pregnant. And it's a community from people literally from all over the world who are taking the class, that they can now connect with other moms and get to know them, be comfortable, be friendly with them, so that they feel comfortable asking all of those silly questions. And that if they've had a hard week, a difficult week, or one where they can't get answers, they know that at least once a week, they know I'm there for them, asking all the questions that they have. And I am telling you, there is nothing like meeting with with a group of women who are going through what you're going through. There's power in that. And when we're feeling really up, we can give back to others. And if we're feeling really down or had a difficult day and night, and we need to get that's from other people, they're not just me, but the group is wonderful, and they're there for each other. So the big thing about that for me is this will help to increase the duration. And I've already seen some of the statistics. There's 3 women in the group who stopped breastfeeding 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks with their first baby. And I'm now seeing these chunky monkeys at 8 months, 9 months old. And the moms have been able to navigate returning to work and pumping.
Great.
Things that they were not able to do last time, largely because they didn't have support. And they felt very intimidated about things. And then to see another woman say, you know what, I think you should just tell your boss, this is what I need to do. It's not going to last forever, but this is what I need.
So
And
yeah.
so another woman says, you can do that, you did that, and Elizabeth, I'll just call her, said, sure, I just told them I need a little extra time, and it's not going to be that much, and I'm still going to give you all of my time and energy, but yeah, I might need another 20 minutes every single day to do what I need to do.
The community's offering practical solutions as well as the support. Yeah.
Yes.
That's really super.
Yeah, so I'm loving the class.
Oh, I will make sure that all the links are in there too. I want to shift our conversation as we kind of wind it around a little bit. With all the educating that you do and all the support that you give out, 2 questions. How do you give yourself support? And I'll do one question at a time. How do you give yourself support?
That has ebbed and flowed. There have been periods in my life where I have had more friends that I actively saw on a regular basis. Because to me, that's what I need for myself. It is, I can sit and I can be quiet, and I can have some me time. And as my kids have gotten older, it's much easier for me to get that me time. But what I find really helps for me most of the time is to get out with other people, other moms, and be sociable. And there have been times in my life where I have not only just done a better job, it's just it was built into my work social life.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when that's not as great and wonderful as I would like for it to be. And just being very vulnerable here at the moment, that I don't have too much of that in my real day-to-day life, but I do have that in a virtual community.
Mm-hmm.
So, I get to meet, people like you and hang out with you during the month, and get a lot of those needs met. I find that my needs are not as great and as intense as they were when I was very much in the thick of mothering. So I just find those little pockets and little ways to go about it.
Yeah. And I think the seasons of life give us different needs in different times, in my experience, don't you?
Yes, because years ago, when I was so much more needy, if I didn't get it, then life was very difficult for me and everybody else. And now if I don't get exactly what I need, like, I'm okay, and it'll happen next week, next month. It's like I am not going to go crazy within myself and with all the people around me if I'm not getting some of my personal needs met.
Yeah. The other question I had in terms of flipping the questions were, what is the most challenging part of your work?
The most challenging part really actually doesn't come from me. outward because I really love what I do, feel I'm really good at what I do. So the challenges aren't so great from that end, but the challenges more have to be with working with mothers in a very busy world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ways that I was able to help women years ago, constantly needing to stay on top of things and change the way that I do things so that I am meeting them where they are at. And when I say that, I think about technology. I think about how quick things work. So women are more apt to want a very quick fix nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years ago, there was more of an acceptance like, oh, this will take a little time. I could do that. This might take 3 or 4 weeks to master this skill. This might take a few more weeks until I feel really good at it. And it might take a month until I'm really confident. I could do that as long as I'm learning and progressing in the right direction. And now I see so many women, they're literally like just crossing their arms and saying, if you can't make this better for me now today, I just don't know if I can continue.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that make my life, my work more challenging are constantly needing to be creative to keep mothers in the game, speak their language so I can help them be their best.
That's an interesting one. And I'm going to ask this next question without second guessing that may be one of your answers. What three things, not about breastfeeding, but about life, would you like listeners to know?
Hmm. I have several close people in my life who are battling illnesses, cancer. So I'm getting updates from them from time to time on Facebook Live. Some are not local, some are. And the one message that I keep getting from one of my friends really is to be here now. That, and she's not literally saying don't sweat the small stuff, but she's saying when I'm angry that the great doctors that I have here on my team haven't figured out what's wrong yet, I then remember a conversation I have with a friend who lives in another part of the country who doesn't have good health care at all. And I remind myself to be thankful for the great team that I have here who will eventually figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend Susie does not have access to that great team. So I would really love for people to know to truly something that I'm constantly trying to incorporate within my own self to don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that old, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So I just had someone on Facebook post me some pictures and someone text me. They are literally in my stomping grounds in New York, and they're going to some of the places I haven't seen and been in years. And it brings me back to somewhat of my childhood, but also my teenage years. And so just I think other people help to give me perspective about my life currently if I'm ever getting a little too annoyed or frustrated or angry or something. So for this person, I'll just call her Sarah. She brought me back to the good old college days and how much fun it all was. And I almost forgot things like getting fake IDs and fun stuff like that. So for me, just seeing those pictures, it just reminded me of, again, that whole, just be here now, because in 20 years from now, like if I'm aggravated with something that's happening now, 20 years from now, I'm going to be looking back to today and say, why didn't you just enjoy it?
Mm-hmm.
Why were you going so crazy about that?
Mm-hmm.
And so for, to be reminded of that. And let's see, a third thing. What would I like people to remember? I know it sounds a little crazy and everything, but gosh, I talked about this with my husband all the time. Like, I don't understand what's so hard about life. Why can't we just be nice to each other, love each other, and have peace in the world? I just don't understand why it's so hard to be nice and kind and respectful to each other. And if we had that, I know it's so simplistic, but we'd have peace in the world. And why is that? That's my big question. Why is that so hard?
Yeah, I don't think that sounds crazy at all. Makes perfect sense to me. Perfect sense. Those are beautiful, really beautiful. What's next for you? What do you have in your future? Any big ideas or thoughts or plans
Yes, way big thoughts, way big plans.
that you
So
want to share? Yeah.
yeah, so for those who don't know me and aren't familiar with the work that I do, I'm a lactation consultant, so I see moms in a private practice. And I've also created this breastfeeding course, which I want to really thrive and spread the word. I want to get like big contracts with hospitals to buy the course. I just want the work that I've done to just grow and make a huge difference. And along with that, my husband and I are evolving. So we are looking to shift from a home based life where we're working every day to getting to really, really downsizing, which is very scary, and going to an RV that may be maybe 450 square feet, 8 feet. 8 feet wide and 7 feet high or something fun like that, and literally getting rid of most of the stuff we have and things that we really, really care about, packaging them up and putting them in storage. Our plan is for a year, but we all also just say to ourselves, hey, listen, it's just us. For so long, we had kids to worry about. But now we say it's just us. If we love it, we go longer. If after 3 months we don't like it, we sell the RV and find ourselves a home. But my goal, my wish has always been to travel the United States. My husband is a world traveler. I really want to travel and see the United States. And I want to go to all the national parks. And I want to go down all the scenic highways and byways. And I really want to dive deep into the beautiful, good old United States. And I don't relish the thought of going to different hotels and sleeping in different beds every night and that kind of thing. So that's where our RV plan is. And we hope to be doing that sometime in the next 12 months. So that is huge. Of course, our family and everybody think we're crazy. Our kids kind of like talk amongst themselves and say they're never going to do it. But that is our strongest wish and plan, and we are committed to doing that. And while we're doing that, that breastfeeding course is just going to keep rolling on. I can still
Yeah.
connect with people virtually.
I think it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. And I think it's exciting. I love the "it's just us" part. You know, that's
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, having 3 kids and always having to think about them. And if you move, the school districts
Hmm.
and all that other stuff. But the funniest thing is, it is just us.
Hmm.
But now we have our grown-up children now turned around and they're talking about us and saying what they think we are going to do and aren't going to do. And they're talking about the crazy parents
That's
rather
funny.
than talking about the crazy kids.
That is funny. Well, for the last question, I just want to ask you if there's anything that you'd like to say that I didn't ask.
Well, I think about that. I've really covered it all. I'm really glad to be able to be on your show. It is, because of the world that I'm in, birthing and breastfeeding and parenting, I tend to kind of stay in that bubble. And I was so excited when you asked me to be on your show because I often think that sometimes I spend a little too much time preaching to the choir. And a big part of my mission is to talk about the world that I live in with people who don't live in the world so they can have, a bird's eye view into it. Because here's the deal. I mean, I do breastfeeding, right? But almost everybody is or will be soon be hanging out with a breastfeeding mom, whether they see her in the park and I'd love them to give her a high five, or they're working with them. There are business owners listening to this show. And, I would love for them to be kind and respectful and to embrace the breastfeeding mother, because let me tell you something, she is doing hard work in this world. And so I just thank you for allowing me to be on the show and exposing other audiences to the work that I do.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here. And another value that I would like to really emphasize that speaks throughout all your words is kindness.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. It's mutual.